Hey everybody, this is Troy from the Do-It-Yourself World Electronics. Today we're going to finish the Bedini motor. I've got it sitting together here somewhat. I need to secure the boards, the spacer boards. As you can see, it wobbles a bit, so I'll be tying them down later with something. But I've got the coil sitting up there at the right space for now, and we'll go into that later when we're tuning and adjusting the Bedini motor. I've got my soldering iron firing up. I've got my circuit diagram here, which will be on the website, and all the components laid out in front of me. So, actually I only need one of these. One of them is wrong. I think it's that one is wrong. So here we go, everything in front of me, and we're going to put together the final circuits of the Bedini motor and get it running tonight, hopefully. Okay now guys, my soldering iron is heated up nicely. I've got my transistor sitting on the solder spool. It fits nice and perfect in there, so it holds it in place for work. Now we'll go over this on the website, but the transistor has 3 pins. The case itself is a pin, and they're called emitter, base, and collector. Now again, we'll go over that on the website. It's very important. If you look at the transistor, the pins are up higher on one side than on the other, and that helps you identify the pins very simply. So we have emitter, base, and collector. Now I'm looking at the diagram here, and we'll refer to the website as we work. Okay, the diode 1N4007 connects to the collector. Now I'm going to solder. You can also use crimp-on end connectors to make your work easy, and you can crimp the things together and use screws and bolts to connect everything, nuts and bolts I should say, to connect the parts together where you want to make temporary connections. I'm going to solder, so I want you to just realize that you can do either way. Okay, the diode, the positive side of the diode is going on the collector, and I'm going to start with that. Now again, remember, if you've forgotten, refer to my article where I show you how to identify a diode. The stripe on the diode is the negative side. Now I'm going to put that on the collector here, and I'm going to twist it around, and that'll give me a very good bit of something here to work with on soldering to the collector. And then everything else will get soldered to the leg of the diode, and that'll make it just so much better for me to work with. So I'm just going to tighten that on there. Now this circuit we're making tonight is our first. After that, we're going to fine-tune this stuff, so we can solder this up, whatever, but later on we're going to get really advanced for those of you who want to follow on to the more advanced levels. So just know that what we're doing here is a beginner circuit. It's the same circuit, but we're going to learn to fine-tune it later. Okay? Now I got to get the good solder connection onto that. The biggest trick is to get a good amount of heat on that collector. I might have to put a bolt on that anyway. It's moving on me. Got to get enough heat in that collector to get that solder to stick on. That's the toughest part of soldering with this large chunk of metal like this. Looks like I got it. Okay, I got it. Now, oh, it's magnetic. Now the whole thing's going to be very, very, very hot to touch now that you did that. You want to cool it down. Put it on the cold metal. Let that thing cool down. You definitely don't want to leave that hot very long. Okay? Now, also coming to the collector is going to be one of the wires of the coil. So that'll be the power wire of the coil. And also connecting is one of the legs of the neon light. So we're going to take the neon, and I'm going to strip those wires a little bit longer, and we'll connect that on there next. This is probably going to be a relatively longish video to get the whole circuit put together. I think I might have to bring over some more light. That one might be long enough. Okay, now the neon light is an AC light, so it doesn't matter which way you connect it. So I'm going to twist this onto the leg of the diode that I left exposed on here. This connects to the collector of the transistor. I want to wrap it on nicely, round and round and round on there. Oops. Come on, the soldered part doesn't want to bend so much. And that'll give me a good connection. And that's basically your safety, your fuse, for emergency situations, in case there's a, well, we'll get into that later, but this is almost like your breaker. It's your safety device. The neon light will light up if you forget to hook up your battery, and that'll stop you from frying your transistor. Alright, now the other leg, the other wire that goes to the emitter. But we also have another diode on the emitter, so I want to hook that up from the emitter to the base, and that'll give me another leg to solder to on the emitter. So I use the legs of the diodes, the wires of the diodes, alright, as solder points to connect my parts to. That makes it a lot easier than trying to solder multiple times on the transistor, which is heavy metal and takes a lot of heat to heat up. So I want to go positive from the emitter and negative to the base. So I've got to look, the stripe is negative, so we'll put it like this. And I'm going to put it higher up on here, and I'm going to wrap it around that pin, okay, tightly, and the same here. Twist it around that pin and bring it around. Now I've got a connection. Now I'm going to tighten it so it stays up high. This way I have it better opportunity to work with here. Tighten it on there. This is just how I do it. You can probably do it different ways and you'll probably slap it together quick, but I'm doing a demonstration and this is how I've always put these together. And then verify, because once you get it on there it's going to be hard to take off. Emitter base collector. So the base has the negative and the emitter has the positive side of the diode. Because once it's on there, once it's on there pretty good. Now from the emitter, I can just solder the rest of the wires onto their end of the base. So now I can go ahead and solder those on, and then the wires of the diode give me solder points for future. I love this Weller soldering iron, by the way. It's really good. Okay. There's that. Now, I'm going to hit that leg of the neon as well now. Solder that onto here. And get that on there. Okay. Now the other leg goes on to the emitter, so we're going to wrap it onto this other extension of the diode we left hanging out. Okay, so we're going to wrap that into the other end of the wire on here, round and round and round a couple times. That is stiff because it's soldered. It's going to give me trouble. Yeah, alright, I gotta get that with my pliers. Hold on a minute. Be back in a minute. Okay, now I've got the little light bulb it's called a grain of wheat light bulb, is going to go on to the base next. So it'll be on this pin here. Super fine wire it is. I'm going to solder that on because it's so tiny. I want to make sure it stays in place. Okay. Good. And then the other end of that goes on to our resistor, brown, black, brown, 100 ohm resistor. So we'll put that on here. We're going to keep our wires short, so we're putting everything really close to the ends on these things, okay? Really tight on these wires. And then we have to solder that. Now, the other side goes to our variable resistor, potentiometer, variable resistor. Now it shows here, I'm going to show you this later on the circuit, on the website, but the wiper is the middle wire and connects to the first wire. So I'm going to wrap the resistor around two of these wires and then on back out. And that connects the two. Okay. And then we'll solder them in place. Again, these are thicker, so they're going to take a little bit more heat. Although this is second hand, so might not be so bad to solder on it already. We'll see how it goes. That one took. I think I need more light in this project. The back side of that. Okay, now that's connected. Now we're starting to get a circuit going on here, okay? Now, what we have next is we've got, here's our circuit so far, okay? What we've got next is we're going to have the battery wires coming off the collector, the diode from the collector. We've got another battery wire coming down from the emitter, so that'll be connected here. And we've got our coil wire coming on down here too. So we're going to bring our coil into play now. Bring our coil over here. And now you've got to strip these wires. So you need to get a knife. And you're going to carefully, very carefully, strip the ends of these wires. So let me get my little, well, I've got my Leatherman here, but it's too big. Get my knife out. And, okay. You want to strip the end of this carefully. Straighten it out. it's got enamel on it. It's called magnet wire, and it has enamel on it to protect it from conducting electricity. So you can very carefully, gently, you can see how easily it comes off. Strip that enamel off all the way around, giving you a good clean copper wire to solder to. You want to make sure you get all that enamel off all the way around. It takes a minute. Alright, so I'm going to do the rest of these wires. All 4 of them you want to clean off entirely. On the ends, I see a little bit of enamel left on that side. It's awkward and it's going to fight you. It's very awkward. It's fighting me. Okay, I got it. I won the battle. Now I'm going to do the others. I'm sure you probably can't even see that on video. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, now referring to your diagram. The bottom of the coil on the diagram is the bottom of the coil in reality here. Very simple then. It makes it easy for you. Okay? Now, there's a thick wire and a thin wire, if you remember when you rolled this spool. The thin wire is called the trigger wire, and the thicker wire is called the power wire. Okay? So we have the trigger wire is on the left side of the diagram when you refer to the diagram, okay? The power wire is on the right side of the diagram, so just remember that. And distinguish these. We'll take our thin wires to the left side over here, and our power wires to the right side. The thicker wires to the right. Alright? Now, our top trigger wire now goes to our diode. So the thin top wire goes, or to our resistor, goes to our resistor here. So we're going to wrap this around. We're going to bring it in and wrap it around a couple times around that pin. And then we're going to solder that on there. Okay. Now I like to use my Leatherman just as a place to sit things so they sit still for me. My Leatherman isn't harmed by the heat if I goof or whatever, or spill any solder. Okay. Now, the other side, the bottom side of the trigger wire, okay, now that goes to the emitter of our transistor. So on the right side where the neon light goes to, we'll wrap that onto this leg of the diode that we left hanging out for that purpose. And that's also going to be like your common ground of the entire circuit. Okay, and solder that on. Okay, now the trigger wire, the trigger coil is all together. Alright, now I want to take the power coil is now going to hook up to 2 battery wires. So we're going to have to come back to that one. The top wire of the power coil is going to hook up to your 2 battery wires. Alright, so your plus of one and the minus of another. We'll come back to that. The bottom of your power coil, the other wire, goes to your collector. So that's why we left this pin off here. Alright, so we're going to wrap that onto the collector. Getting to be a spaghetti mess of wires out here now. Wrapped it on. Now later I'm going to trim these wires down and make this neat. Make sure I got a good connection there. Looks good. Okay. Now, I'll be back in a minute because I've got to get the right wire and I've got to get some clamps and figure out which batteries we're going to be using here. Okay? Now, what clamps you use for your battery connections, where's my camera here? Can I get that in the view? Here, your batteries. You're going to want to figure out what batteries you're going to use and then figure out what clamps you're going to put on here. So I'll be back in a minute.